What is it about legacy in political families? Is this the family business?
For me, it wasn't.
There's new legislation that's being fast-tracked right now. If I'm protesting, I can be spied on, I can be arrested. Is the end result not a police state?
There are people very, very worried about what this government has been doing and is doing.
Are you going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada? First of all, I just want to say thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. I'd like to start maybe with a couple personal questions. Down in the States, it's looking like we might have a Bush-Clinton 16. What is it about legacy in political families? Obviously, your father was a tremendous force in Canadian politics. Is this the family business?
For me, it wasn't.
Right.
For me, I was so proud to become a high school teacher, to become an activist in all sorts of ways that I said, I believe in making a difference, but I'm not sure that politics is the path for me. And I knew that going into politics with the kind of weight of my father behind me would make it all that much more difficult.
Sure.
I have to work extra hard to highlight that I am my own person and that I'm not just about defending what happened 40 or 50 years ago, but I'm about responding to today's challenges. But one of the things that really encourages me is I spend so much time talking to young people for whom my father was something out of their grade 8 textbook,
Sure.
But doesn't have any reality in a connection or emotional sense that are responding very positively to my approach and to what I have to offer. So that's reassuring to me that it's not just about name or legacy.
Right. So we've talked a little bit about your past. Are you going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada?
I'm working very, very hard on it. I mean, we have a huge hill to climb. We're in a distant third place right now. And to form government means we have to demonstrate a level of hard work and engagement and ability that'll make Canadians say, yeah, this is the team we want. But the Liberal Party, sitting in the center as we are, we need to draw from a whole bunch of people who are voting for, not just voting against the extremes they don't like. And that means going after that cynicism and saying, no, let's be hopeful and positive about the future we want to build and roll up our sleeves and work to get it. The lack of environmental responsibility on the world stage by Canada has led to people being able to point to our oil sands and make them, entirely unfairly, the poster child for climate change.
Number one for our demographic, the environment. I know you're very progressive on the environment. However, you've come out for Keystone. Maybe you could explain that a little bit.
Sure. Well, first of all, we need a government in Canada that actually recognizes that climate change is real and a real threat. Because for all that this government tries to pretend it cares about it, it's not actually acting on it. What that means is we need a price on carbon. We need to make sure that Canada is playing a role in getting to a price on carbon. Right now, this government has not done it and not even been willing to talk about it. Really.
It's actually rolled back Kyoto Protocol.
Totally rolled back and is an obstructionist on the world stage, which is where we've lost a lot of our used to be good reputation as a country. People are wondering what happened to Canada.
That's my follow-up. What happened?
Well, we have a government that figured out or that chose to play up fear's division, got elected on promises of accountability and transparency that it then completely threw out the window as soon as it did.
But oil.
Oil. What this government did when it came in is it said, okay, we need to get our resources to market better. So we're going to quash all the protest groups. We're not going to engage in community licensing. And we're going to ease up on regulations so that we can get things built. And what has happened is because they've done that, nobody's letting them build the project. So even a project like Keystone XL, which is a good and responsible project, has become a symbol for climate change. If you want to stop climate change, stop this pipeline, stop the oil sands. And the counter argument that no, we're doing this responsibly, we're making sure we get the balance right, we're doing environment and economy together has not been said. And therefore people don't trust our government. So yes, Canadians know, everybody knows we need jobs, we need to grow our economy. We just need to do it in a responsible way, and that's what this government completely hasn't gotten.
You have to leave now.
What's to stop this bill from being used to spy on the government's political enemies?
So when I was growing up here in Ottawa, Canada, I was in a group called Youth Action for Peace. And when Reagan came, we protested, and I also worked for Greenpeace Canada, lots of protesting. So if I'm opposed to Keystone or oil sands or what have you, I can go out and protest. However, there's new legislation that's being fast-tracked right now. If I'm protesting, I can be spied on, I can be arrested. I worry about this in America, I worry about this in Europe, I especially worry about it up here, that much like in 1984, we use the threat of terrorism to give the government and police special powers. And every time I talk to politicians, I understand the reasons why. However, is the end result not a police state?
No, and I understand that fear, particularly now in Canada, where we have a government, even before it brought this forward, was calling environmental activists out west terrorists, and it's ramped up the rhetoric and has displayed a pattern of disrespect and aggression. I mean, there are people very, very worried about what this government has been doing and is doing. So they put forward a piece of legislation that has a number of very worrying elements in it. However, there are a number of things in that legislation that increase security for Canadians, that do make us safer at a time where people are worried about terrorism, people are worried about these things. We have pledged to fix that because there shouldn't be a contradiction between keeping people safe and respecting the values and rights that we're so proud of in a free country.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, it seems sane. You know, we want to keep our people safe. However, when you can read their emails, when you can tap their phones without warrant, when you can incarcerate them. When you talk about this legislation, amending it, or I believe you said, look, we'll fix it if we get elected. I realize you're not in power now, but shouldn't there be a little bit more?
Well, first of all, in the years following 9/11, it was my party, it was a Liberal government that brought in counter-terror legislation. But of course, now we're 15, 16 years later, there's a whole set of new challenges. We need to make sure that we're updating that. And this government is doing it with an eye towards the politics of fear. Our best challenge is saying, well, how do we not make this about partisan politics? How do we show Canadians that there is a responsible balance, there is a responsible party out there? And we'll say, yes, there are measures that are going to keep Canadians safer in this piece of legislation, so we're going to support it. But it's not the type of legislation we would have brought forward. We're going to be proposing amendments, and a few months from now, we will offer it in our election platform, and we will fix it if we get elected. Because what we need to understand is it is imperative to protect our privacy, to protect our freedom, to protect our values as a country, that we change this government, and that's what I'm focused on.
I'm actually not in favor of decriminalizing cannabis. I'm in favor of legalizing it.
Imagine selling marijuana just like cigarettes and alcohol. Justin Trudeau, he's in way over his head.
So let's talk about the next election platform and the fun stuff. Let's get to the fun stuff. Pot.
Yeah.
Go.
Canada right now has the #1 rate of teen underage use of marijuana in the world.
Wow.
Of 29 developed countries.
I didn't know that.
It's easier for kids to buy a joint than it is to buy a beer or even a cigarette.
Yeah.
Okay? So our current system isn't working. we want to keep it out of the hands of our kids while respecting adults' rights to make their choices. And that means if we control and regulate it the way one controls and regulates alcohol, for example, it actually becomes more difficult for underage people to get it.
Sure.
And most importantly, it keeps the millions upon millions of dollars that right now is being funneled into criminal organizations and gangs, back into public coffers, where we get to invest in treatment, in research, in understanding exactly how best to manage this particular product.
If pot is the most popular thing or out of the developed nations and you taxed it, you wouldn't have to have sales tax. I mean, it would be a huge boon for
There's
the
a certain amount of money that comes in. You have to find the right level, because if you overtax, well, then the black market comes in anyway. But finding something that actually works, and there's lots of models around the world.
Sure.
Colorado's one that we can look at. And when I first announced the policy, every interview I had, there'd be a question. So you're going to legalize pot? It was the big, and I used to roll my eyes and say, oh, I've got to talk about this again. I really want to talk about our plan for the economy, but okay, I'll talk about this. But then I realized that talking about this actually becomes a proof point for evidence-based policy, for not being stuck on ideology of reefer madness, the attack ads that the Conservative government is putting out against me personally, saying I want to, make it easier for kids to get pot, is a blatant misrepresentation, and it's the kind of scare tactics that are actually bouncing back on them, because people are saying, wow, these guys are really out to lunch and they don't understand a solid piece of public policy the way Justin's presenting it.
So the next election, be partisan politics, they always are. One of the things we were talking a little bit about earlier is young people, getting them invested in the political process. Why? Because environment is important. Legalization of pot is important. All of these issues, by the way, the security,
net neutrality, understanding those issues that are so important, not just to young people, but to the future of our economy and of our country, is huge.
So we're going to be talking to young people continually and saying all of this stuff. Okay, these are important issues to you. What would you say to them about the next election?
Well, first of all, young people get a bad rap for being apathetic.
Sure.
And they are about politics, but that's not because they don't care, because we have a generation of young people more aware of the world, more invested in, more interested, more compelled to find their way to make a difference and have themselves heard. But politics just no longer seems like a worthwhile use of their time to invest in, to actually make a difference. So for me, turning that around and demonstrating through responsible policies, through an openness to debate, to the kinds of public events that I always do, where I'm just open to questions and challenges from everyone, where people can feel that they're getting traction in engaging, is a big piece of it, especially because getting young people out to vote isn't just about getting a few more ballots into the progressive side of the equation, which of course I'll take, but it's also about understanding that we have a generation of young people who have an awful lot to say about where the world's going, and naturally think more long-term and are less afraid of change. I mean, all these transformative changes are happening around you, so people are unafraid of change at the political level when you're young. And we need to draw on that dynamism, because quite frankly, our politics, our approach to so many issues in this world needs to shift.
Well, Canada's going backwards, quite frankly.
We have been for the past 8-9 years, and that's what we've got to wake up to.